My name is Fred Beebe, and I'm a longtime member of the UU congregation. I was born in Jamestown, New York in February 18th, 1924. I'm the third son of three brothers, and everyone is gone. My mother, my father, and my two brothers have been dead for several years, so I'm a lone wolf. One of my most precious engagements is to go to the Unitarian Church every Sunday morning when I can. My first memory is something that was told to me, if you can have that as a first memory, but I don't have really early memories. But my mother and father and two brothers had moved to a hilltop in Jamestown, New York, and I was about just a toddler, and they couldn't find me, and they were worried about me, and we went out into the street, which was just a muddy street. They were going to pave it, and I was out there in the middle of the street, sitting, eating mud with a spoon. So that's the earliest memory. And my mother and father lived to be, my mother lived to be 71 and father lived to be 98. But in those early days, they had a new house that they had bought, and we were there until, well, we were there. I forget how old she was, but she had a nervous breakdown after a stillborn daughter was born about 5 years after me, and so she had to go to the state hospital in Gowanda, New York for 2 years. My father hired several different ladies over the years to help take care of us, and so by the time I was ready to go to school, my older brother, who was only 9, he had to take me to school because there was no one else available because father was working. And so he inherited an overly responsible sense of how important he was, because he was sort of serving as the parent at 9 years old. But anyway, we went through the absence of our mother at the hospital, and father, and she was there for 2 years, and I was with her when they picked her up in the hospital, and she came back home to us almost as good as ever, but she had a severe breakdown. But then we went on. The family lost their house because there were too many expenses, so we had to move across Jamestown to another palatial mansion compared to what it was before, and we had to change schools and everything, but we managed as a family, and so we went on through grade school and junior high, and I finally graduated. Not that I didn't have to try real hard, but in 1942, and I met my wife in Latin class when she was taking Latin 1, and she had taken Latin 1, but anyway, we met in Latin class, and it was 15 and 16, I think, and we struck up a relationship. Well, it was after the war. I enlisted in the Navy. I was away for 3.5 years in the Navy in World War II, and it was very nice because when I was in the Navy, you knew it mostly come home at least once a year, except, not like the infantry. While I was in the Navy, we were assigned to be in the giant invasion. I was at Utah Beach, which is it was not too much explained, but I was at Utah Beach, and we were bombarding the German embattlements, and somebody's silkscreen got all fouled up. So my ship was named the Fitch, and the one beside us at the placement was the Cory, and the Cory was sunk. And I and a colleague were on the upper deck, canceled the frequency that the Germans were using to put special missiles right over the top of the land. But we didn't know that we ever canceled any of those missiles. But anyway, after the battle was over, we went down because the Cory had been sunk, and we went down to the first deck, and the deck was littered with body baskets because there were so many. The Cory had sunk, and a lot of the crew of that ship was killed. After we had finished with Normandy, we went up into the Mediterranean and up the coast of Italy, and it was so sad because everybody was starving and things like that. And we came out to come back to the United States, and they converted us to a minesweep from a destroyer, and we went off into the South Pacific hoping to invade Okinawa, but we didn't do that because we had struck a coral reef, and we had to go to Pearl Harbor for dry dock, and so some of our shipmates were transferred to the forest. And the forest was kamikaze, but it wasn't sunk. So there, but for the grace of God, I could have been killed, a couple different times already. But then we were in the South Pacific doing the minesweeping, and that's where I was when the war was ended. And so I was at Normandy, and I was at the Bay of Tokyo when they signed the armistice with the Japanese. After I got out of the service, my brother got me a job in a factory, and I decided, we were married by then, we married the month after I got out of the service, Ann and I, and I didn't find any satisfaction in the job that I was given, and so I decided to go to art school in Pittsburgh. So I enrolled for 2 9-month years of a course in advertising illustration. Well, this is an example of the kind of work that I was taught, artwork that I was taught to do in Pittsburgh. That I was, as a commercial artist, I was required to draw. I was required to draw. Nowadays, people don't draw. They just punch machines. And so we were down in Pittsburgh, and Ann was already pregnant by that time. So we went down as a small family and lived with all the other GIs, having not a pot to hiss in. And so we had a social life because we had so many people that didn't have any money. And we got out of school and we came back north. We had the baby by then, the first boy, and so I kept searching for jobs, and finally a friend of my mother's worked at a place that had other contacts, and so she helped me get a job, in a manufacturing plant, so I worked there for 4 years, and it was a good experience. Well, these are pictures of my wife and family, and the teenage girl is my wife when she was in high school, and my grown sons on the bottom are their swarthy selves, and the other one is me, about I think. I've entered several shows in the May, what they call the May show, and I've had several different things exhibited at the Art Institute, no, the Art Museum, you know, and most importantly, recently, here at the retirement compound, I entered a show for arts and crafts, which was the first show we had, and it was by vote of the common public, and I took first in the show. The crayon drawing in the middle, that is long and skinny, is a picture I call Weeds. It's all done in crayon on corrugated cardboard. And the upper left is a watercolor drawing that I took from the porch of our vacation home in Cape Cod, but we were there for only 2 weeks a year for about 6 years. But I made that crayon, or that, yeah, that's the watercolor. And then there's an assemblage. As you can see, my wall is sort of adorned with all sorts of different creations. And there's it looks like a chocolate cake, which was my father's 90th wedding present. And that's my father in the lower left. And then there's a benediction up there from Terry Kime, and all sorts of different things, paper cuts and watercolors and you name it. There's even a photograph there of Sandy Wise, that was Jim Wise's former wife, and that color wheel of all those flowers up there is one of my paper cuttings, and the tulips. No, I mean the irises are up there, and everything else is sort of mostly my paper cuttings or arrangements of leaves or somewhat else that caught my fancy. This picture is a 4-generational family picture. My son is standing in the back with his daughter. My son is named Brian, and his daughter is named Lisa, and her daughter named Jeannie. So I'm sitting in the front with my beard. So that's 4 generations. And I must say that in Texas, I have a great-great-granddaughter, or later. Well, I've been given the chance to say what I'd like to say to wrap up this thing. In my 88th year, going on toward the 89th, I consider myself very, very fortunate to have all of my faculties so that I can still read or write, but I can't get around much as I used to, but I'm still finding life being worthwhile, and I would like very much to say thank goodness for church and this another welcoming congregation right here in our Brevelier Village in Conrad House. where everybody has been so especially